In October 30, 2023, Georgianne Chapin talks big about possible lawsuits and causing public outrage in her articles about the donoharm.report. Also in other articles, talks about doctors being held accountable. But does donoharm.report, does that really live up to the hype? Let's have this conversation together because intactivists and people alike should review this project together and definitely have a discussion about it. So let's first figure out what is the donoharm.report. So the purpose of the donoharm.report is to assist people in filing complaints with regulatory agencies against medical staff and hospitals that have coerced sons into genital cutting. Also, it is to collect complaints regarding medical malpractice, to hold hospitals and healthcare professionals accountable, and also for Intact America to go and distribute the aggregate information. What kind of medical harms can be reported to donoharm.report? Well, you have genital surgery complications, forced foreskin retraction, and circumcision solicitation. Now, this all sounds fantastic, but once you start reading into it, it gets a little interesting. So let's go. All right. So as we read here, as what are the purposes of the donoharm.report, you see it says to assist people in filing complaints with regulatory agencies against medical staff and hospitals that have coerced parents to consent to the genital cutting of their sons. And then number 2, it says to collect complaints regarding medical malpractice, events, and ethical violations perpetrated upon non-consenting boys by healthcare professionals to report these complaints to doctors and facilities responsible for these events and violations, and to state and national regulatory agencies charged with overseeing medical and nursing professional conduct. Now, number 3, to hold hospitals and healthcare professionals accountable and to make them aware that they will be subject to scrutiny, professional discipline, and possible legal action for violating the rights and bodies of children by soliciting parents to consent and conducting harmful and medically unnecessary surgery on their infant sons' genitals. So we're going to learn how they're going to try to hold hospitals and healthcare professionals accountable and why that is going to be a lot more difficult than you think or what they're letting you on to know, at least. And also, what I've noticed reading this, notice, before you continue, it says genital cutting of their sons, consenting boys right here. And then it says infant sons' genitals. All right, so right here, they're using masculine. This is telling you, hey, this is about male circumcision, right? This is about the men when you read this, all right? Continuing on, it says, Intact America will distribute the aggregate information to the media and the general public to create public outrage. So Intact America has actually tried to cause public outrage before with surveys. They have done many surveys trying to sway the public. The surveys have their own problems, and that's for another video, but point being is that most likely this is just going to end up being another data point for intactivists to put up on their social media, blog posts, or their protesting signs. Is that going to sway the public? I'm not sure, but I do know that Intact America has tried this already with surveys. But again, this is number 4. They're going to try and create public outrage. So all of this sounds really good. So let's go over the types of medical harms that can be reported through donoharm.report. Now, keep in mind, I am on the website. I've been on the website here. So yes. So first type is genital surgery complications. Every time you click on read more, this pops up. Anyways, it says, excessive bleeding and infection are the most common immediate complications of routine infant circumcision and should always be reported. Failure of healthcare professionals to follow up puts the child at risk and also should be reported. Complications from circumcision and other genital surgeries can result in lifelong functional and sexual problems. Persons of any age who have been harmed by genital cutting may file a complaint here. Now, if you keep reading down here, I'm actually going to move myself so you can see this better. It says complaints about complications from female genital cutting, transgendered reassignment surgery, hormone treatments, and intersex gender norming surgery may also be filed with this service. All of these can have complications, and doctors should not be making decisions for children before they can consent. Now, if we go to the purpose of the donoharm.report, they were talking about boys and sons. And now all of a sudden, it's like, hey, we can do everybody. We can do females and transgendered people and hormone treatments even. And to me, this seems like Intact America is taking already stretched thin resources and thinning them out even more, and already kind of losing the purpose of the donoharm.report. Actually, it sounds like you're going to get more transgendered regret people on donoharm.report than complaints from actual parents that end up choosing to circumcise their sons, whether that be through pressure or by some kind of mistake or whatever, and, regretting it later on. So you're kind of already branching out preemptively. So I just feel like the donoharm.report is already losing its purpose a little bit. But then if we go down to number 2, foreskin retraction, this talks about forcibly pulling back a male child's foreskin damages his penis. Says no one, not even a medical professional, should ever do this. Okay, it talks about why you shouldn't do it. It says Intact America found that 43% of boys under the age of 6 has experienced the forcible retraction of their foreskins by an adult. So they already have this information, right? They already did the surveys on this. So if you did the surveys on this, why is this not causing public outrage? Like, why are you trying to get more data? You already did the survey on it, right? And also, I don't even know how you'd even file a complaint for foreskin forced retraction. It doesn't seem likely that you're going to use the donoharm.report, because this is going to probably turn into a he said, she said type of thing, because I don't think anyone's going to admit, oh, I tried touching your baby's you-know-what outside of a medical setting. And if a parent lets a doctor retract the foreskin of their child, they probably don't know it's supposed to not be pulled back, and I don't know what kind of evidence you're going to go ahead and put in a file in a complaint. Like, how are you going to prove this? It doesn't make logical sense, because what evidence can you use? Because, once again, it's going to be like a he said, she said thing. Anyways, continuing, it says the American Academy of Pediatrics forbids forcible foreskin retractions of boys' foreskins, but healthcare professionals are largely either ignorant or disregard the recommendation of the AAP. The common practice of forcible foreskin retraction shows that the battle for the foreskin does not end with parents keeping their newborn sons intact. All right, this is obviously appealing to intactivism right now, saying, oh, the battle for the foreskin does not end with parents. I don't know how this is going to get widely accepted through the mainstream, but we shall see. Now, number 3, circumcision solicitations, right up here. I have a lot to say about this one. So it says, mothers are asked an average of 8 times if they want their newborn son circumcised, according to the research conducted by Intact America. Once again, Intact America, you did the survey. You already had the survey done. You've done the research. You already know your answer. Like, you know what's happening. So why aren't you doing anything about it? Why aren't you trying to sue them? Why don't you get like a mother that got solicited 12 times and help them sue their hospital or shame their hospital or something, Like, why is it that you need more data to file a complaint for this? I don't understand it. Like, you already know this is happening. But anyways, it continues saying, the number of asks is higher for mothers of color because neonatal circumcision is an elective surgery with no therapeutic purpose or benefit. Pressuring parents to consent is an unethical solicitation of a surgery. Even being handed a circumcision consent form is a solicitation. Now, here's the problem with all this. You can say it's an unethical solicitation of a surgery, but is it illegal? Like, if it's not illegal, what are you going to do? Because I tried looking it up. I'm pretty sure a doctor is allowed to ask 25 times if he really wants to, do you want to circumcise your son? Like, what kind of investigation are you going to do there if somebody came to you saying, hey, my doctor asked me to circumcise my kid 35 times and I told him no, and then he brought in nurses and he tried to convince me to do this. Like, okay, he can file a complaint, but it's not illegal. I don't know how you're going to hold anybody responsible. I feel like it's going to be a he said, she said type of thing again. I don't even know what kind of evidence you would even need for that. And even if you had all the evidence, your doctor is allowed to solicit a surgery. I mean, unless there's a law somewhere, because I tried looking it up and I don't see it. And then it talks about here that it's often aggressively pushed by physicians, nurses, and midwives. And then it talks about their motivation is not your son's health. They are selling you something your son does not need because it is profitable. Almost all mothers are asked at least once if they want their son circumcised, and once is too much. Okay, this talks about how much money. And then it says there is no medical reason for this general cutting. All right, and it says child general cutting conducted in the absence of disease or pathology is a medically unnecessary surgical procedure whose sole purpose is to permanently remove healthy tissue, therefore is a violation of medical ethics for physicians to solicit, provide, or seek compensations for such surgeries. So talking about physicians trying to make money off these surgeries. Now, once again, you can say it's a violation of medical ethics, but is it illegal? Like, how is Intact America going to hold these people responsible? Like, I'm super curious about that. And also, let's say that a doctor did ask a mom 8 times, do you want your son circumcised? And she did eventually say, yes, fine, I'll do it. Which people like that don't have the courage or energy to fight with their doctor, do you really think they're going to go and say, oh, yeah, even though I lost the fight with my doctor because he pressured me to circumcise my son, I'm going to go file a complaint right now? You know, like, what kind of person loses a fight with a doctor, you know, because they're just like, oh, he keeps asking me, it's so annoying. Let's just go ahead and just circumcise him, I guess. Why would they turn around and try and file a complaint and keep the fight going? Like, I feel like people like that aren't about, you know, like pressing charges and filing complaints. Or, on the other hand, for, you know, circumcision solicitations, the doctor asks 8 times to circumcise the baby, and the mom just says no. She's like, nope, I don't want to circumcise my baby. Okay. And then what? How is Intact America going to help with this complaint? Because one, if the mom's saying no, she probably just wants to have her kid intact and be left alone, to be honest with you. Like, why would she go and file a complaint? And even if she did file a complaint, what's going to happen to the doctors? They didn't even do the surgery. They just asked 8 times. So all what's going to happen of that is that Intact America is going to have one more statistic to put on a paper. I don't know, I would just like that to be answered with the circumcision solicitations. Intact America, they already know what's happening. They haven't done anything with that information. And now they want people to file complaints about it. But a lot of things have to fall in line for you to file a complaint for circumcision solicitations. And I'll talk more about that later. Let's continue and talk about the steps to use the donoharm.report. So this is what to expect. The first thing you have to do is create an account. So they're going to do a username and password. Okay, so you can save your work as a draft while it is in progress. And so you can return and review it later or track its status. That's step number 1. Then you got to start the complaint. You have to go ahead and fill out your complaint online, decide who to include in your complaint, whether it's a medical professional or persons, and or hospital, clinic, or medical practice. You will be asked to give us details about the incident. Don't worry about getting it perfect the first time. We will help you format the text for clarity. If you run into difficulties, you can contact them by phone or email them. All right, then you finish your complaint. Once you're satisfied, you submit the complaint. And then if you have multiple complaints, you can just repeat 1 through 3. Then after that, you get connected with a caseworker. We will review your case and contact you if we need more information to complete your complaint. We may ask you to upload supporting evidence like photographs or medical records. So now you have to provide all this information. You have to write your case. You're doing quite a bit, right? So number 5 is filing the complaint. Once your caseworker finds that the complaint is complete, they will file it with the appropriate persons, facilities, and regulatory agencies. So this is really the bread and butter of the donoharm.report, is the filing the complaint. Essentially, the donoharm.report, they file the complaint for you and they track what's going on. So that's really, like, this is where they come in. They come in with filing the complaint. And then what happens next, you will receive an email from Intact America with a case number and confirmation that your complaint was filed. We will also send you a copy of your complaint as a PDF document for your records. And then who will be notified? Your complaint will be filed with more than one person, facility, or agency, depending on your case. Now, at this point, it ends, okay? So this ends. Like, this is it. It's done. 8 and 9 don't really matter. But do no harm.report really streamlines and completes step 5. So it really just does this one thing right here. Because if you did it yourself, you would have to go to institutions yourself and do it yourself, and they would give you your case number and confirmation, etc. So 1 step out of 7, do no harm.report's taken care of for you, which is pretty nice. Now, number 8 is what are the risks? Complaining to individuals and institutions carries with it some minor risks that you should be aware of. Doctors, it is possible that if you complain against your pediatricians, they will no longer accept your child or siblings as patients. So they may lose their doctors. From hospitals, they're not under law allowed to retaliate against patients who submit complaints. However, if you feel this happens, please let us know and we will contact that facility on your behalf. And if necessary, we'll file an additional complaint with a state oversight agency. I'm sure hospitals have ways to quote unquote retaliate without breaking laws. But anyways, here's 9. Why file a complaint for a potential lawsuit? Parents or patients who intend to take legal action are encouraged to file a complaint as the first piece of evidence in their lawsuit. You will receive a copy of the complaint and an attestation, I don't know how to say the word, that it was filed. You can use this information should you decide to bring a lawsuit against the persons or facility who violated your rights and your child's body and rights. Another is to change the policy. Speaking critically against wrongdoing always takes courage. It says you will be helping to protect others from similar experiences. Authorities will only act when they hear about a problem. A complaint is the first step in that process. And then this talks about how Intact America will use your complaint. It says Intact America seeks to shed light on the widespread problem of circumcision in the United States to hold medical professionals responsible for perpetrating the practice and to protect future boys and the men they will become. We might ask you to indicate if you are willing to be contacted in the future to participate in a media story, anonymously or otherwise, or as a volunteer caseworker to help others submit complaints. We reserve the right to use aggregate statistical data, always anonymously, to measure our performance, to publicize the scope of the problem through mainstream and social media in order to bring about its end. So those are the steps, right? Now let's break down Intact America's Do No Harm report a little bit more, right? Let's really think about this. The issue that Do No Harm report aims to fix, honestly, is just streamlining the reporting process. Instead of one person reporting a hospital, Intact America will do it for them, which does make it easier. But is it easier enough for people, right? I don't know. That was a lot in just those 10 steps, right? You guys probably got bored of me even reading it to you. But let's talk about some scenarios where you might actually use the Do No Harm report. For the Do No Harm report to be effective and useful, people first have to understand circumcision is wrong. So you have to first understand that. And that solicitations is, quote, wrong, unquote. That is a wild transformation from letting a doctor circumcise your son to, OMG, what I did was so wrong and I need to report this because this doctor pressured me. Or the wild idea that, oh, I already know that circumcising my son is wrong, but this doctor keeps bothering me and pressuring me to circumcise my son. So I'm just going to let him circumcise my boy for now and then report about this incident later. Like, do you think that's going to happen? I don't see any of those two scenarios happening with the solicitations. Another thing is that the consumer must have a decent knowledge of human sex organs. They have to agree to let him be circumcised, even though you don't want to, or you're on the fence about it. And then you have to have the knowledge of the Do No Harm report. And if you have the knowledge of the Do No Harm report, why would you let them circumcise your kid? You know? And not only that, if you let them circumcise your child, it has to be botched or something along that. So you have to know what a botched circumcision looks like, right? So let's go over the things that must happen for you to use the Do No Harm report. A son or an intersex child, a pushy doctor, and you also have to be in an area where the Do No Harm report is covering. And currently it is just covering in Georgia. And then you have to have the mental fortitude to file a report against a hospital. That is what it takes to make that happen. And honestly, I feel like most people would blame themselves for allowing their child to get circumcised or to have their foreskin retracted. Like, that's a normal human thing to think, right? So at best, the Do No Harm report will be used for is reporting circumcisions mishaps, perhaps foreskin retractions, but once again, that could be a problem in of itself because you have a he said, she said. That might involve a lot of fighting, and there's not really a lot of proof that goes into that unless a physician does it, and a lot of people just trust medical authorities. So, and I'm not saying that, I'm just saying it's going to be very hard for that to happen, at least in the way I'm thinking about it, right? So, once again, it may be useful, but again, even for a botched circumcision though, you need to have these things. A son, the parent needs to agree to the circumcision. A botched circumcision needs to take place. The user needs to know, the user of the donoharm.report, they need to know what a botched circumcision is and or what complications of circumcision looks like, the knowledge of donoharm.report again, and also be in a state that it's available in and still have the mental fortitude to fight against the hospital, which is more likely, but still a hard task to do. And they still might not use donoharm.report. They may use their lawyers or something else. All of this for Intact America to have a statistic to use and to potentially have a medical malpractice suit that may put some pressure on doctors to start thinking twice about doing circumcisions. Most likely, it may just have doctors still do circumcisions, but they'll have them done a little bit more carefully, maybe. Like, don't paint me the events that you think are going in the hospital, right? Like, I'm trying to go through some events here that are like maybe plausible to have the donoharm.report to be used in. Now, again, do you actually need the donoharm.report? You don't, right? You could make a complaint against your hospital if you wanted to. You don't need Intact America or the donoharm.report. To me, the donoharm.report is like the credit repair people that settle your debt on your behalf and then charge the person 20% on what they saved them to do it. I have actually settled 2 collections and 1 credit card debt before. It's not hard to do, and it was free, and it was for a friend of mine, so I didn't even need a business license to settle their debt. So just like you don't need a license to make or help a person settle their debt, you don't need a license to make a complaint to the hospital and the other institutions that Intact America is going to make complaints to. But there are pros to the donoharm.report. It does streamline filing complaints by setting up an automated system and having complaints go to them. It does theoretically ensures that it gets done correctly by a company that does it constantly instead of an individual that has to do the research and is more likely to make mistakes. So what 4 institutions is this going to? So if you read right here, it says each report incident will be submitted to the hospital management, respective state oversight agencies, the medical professional who perpetrated the harm, and the National Joint Commission. So those 4 is where you're filing the complaint when you go through donoharm.report. So once again, a person could do that. A person could go to the hospital management and complain, go to the respective state oversight agency, and also go to the medical professional as well as the National Joint Commission and complain to them and file their own complaint. You do not need donoharm.report to do that. The Joint Commission, in case you don't know, you can go ahead and file a complaint here if you wanted to, because once again, you don't actually need Intact America to go ahead and file the concern or complaint. You can do that yourself. But anyways, yeah, so just like Intact America, the Joint Commission is an independent, not for-profit organization. Intact America, they want to help you make your complaints when you could easily just go to the Joint Commission and complain on your own behalf. And Intact America could just teach you how to use their system. But regardless of that, though, the huge major issue that I cannot emphasize enough with donoharm.report is that it has such a low benefit to the consumer. And that is a major, major problem. Think about it. donoharm.report, it puts all of the risk on the user of donoharm.report. Like, for instance, you could lose your doctor, or perhaps the hospital may or may not retaliate against you in some sneaky way. I know it wasn't mentioned, but there is data being exchanged from your medical records to donoharm.report, which is going out to 4 different entities. So there is a chance that there might be a data leak with any of the reports and information that Intact America gives medical professionals, even within the donoharm.report system or another institution's system. So there is a chance that the user may actually lose data. Another issue that wasn't really mentioned is that perhaps you are wasting your time and you're losing time, and that is so precious to so many people, and it benefits Intact America and others, but not the consumer. The only stated benefit is that it may help you in a lawsuit, which it may. Okay, the donoharm.report actually forces the consumer into this accidental role of activism by providing data for Intact America and probably the Hudson Center as well. Also, Intact America does state that they may contact you in the future to participate in a media story or work as a volunteer caseworker. Like, you may get asked that if you use this. Not making that up. I read that recently. Right here, case in point. You can read that again. And another benefit to other people, but not the consumer itself, is that it may protect children down the line. But that's not the mother's or father's current baby that they have now. It's too late. The damage was already done. The user of the donoharm.report really isn't receiving anything for their troubles. To demonstrate how severe of a consequence this is the exact same problem that POTS is having with our e-commerce program. It's beneficial to intactivist groups and beneficial to POTS, but it doesn't really benefit the consumer, and the consumer we are targeting are literally intactivists. They have activists literally in their name. And we have like 12 people that do our e-commerce program out of 50,000 plus people. So why do so many don't do it? It's because it adds extra steps to the consumer and adds a wait time for them getting their products. Even though it will help other intactivist groups and POTS out tremendously, it's a slight burden on them. And the donoharm.report has this problem as well, and this issue extends far beyond activism, and it just goes into your basic human psyche. People don't want to be bothered and get no reward. So there is a very low benefit or reward for people to actually use the donoharm.report. So actually, there is a benefit, quote unquote, to using the donoharm.report that we haven't covered yet, but it's kind of weak and deceptive in my opinion. So let's go over it and let's talk about it. In this article from Cision, it says, Intact America also encourages adult men to use donoharm.report to report physical, sexual, or emotional harm they experience as a result of their circumcisions. Quote, the act of filing a complaint is cathartic, even if their doctors are not still be in practice, Chapin says. So apparently it's therapeutic, because that's what cathartic means. If you don't believe me, cathartic right here, emotionally purging. So how many people here think filling out forms and going through this is cathartic? Like, how are you going to claim that this is therapeutic of some kind to complain against a doctor that isn't even in the practice? But if you continue reading, it says, Chapin says, complaints filed by grown men will prove that circumcision causes lasting damage to both the baby and the man that he will become. I think that's the real reason why they want you to fill it out, so they can go ahead and beef up their data, beef up their statistics to make a case and an excuse to keep up the donoharm.report. But who's buying that it's therapeutic? Like, make a comment down below if you love to fill out forms for therapeutic reasons. Like, I don't know, I'm super curious. Who here would love to fill out a form of donoharm.report to go feel like, does that help you emotionally to fill out a form? I don't know. I feel like that's so disingenuous. And the real reason is they just want the data and cooking that data with inputs of angry men to justify its use, then stopping doctors. This just seems like donoharm.report is going to turn into oh, intactivists now have more data to shout out on the streets now, versus we compile data and we are going to demand that doctors are going to stop and we're going to be effective. That's just what this seems like to me. Another issue with this project is that Intact America is really late on it. So if you go ahead and read this from the donoharm.report, if you go straight down here, it says, Do No Harm.report will be rolled out in spring 2024 in Georgia. Over time, Intact America will expand this groundbreaking reporting tool to every state and the District of Columbia. So this is really late. Spring of 2024. And it is now 2025, late 2024 it got released. So they're about 6-10 months late, I'll say, to getting this done. And the Do No Harm.report was being talked about all the way back in October 30th, 2023. So it took them a year and a half to go ahead and just do Georgia. So that's a long time to do just one state, a year and a half. There's 50 states. So if this trend continues, you'll get the United States done in about 75 years if this trend continues. So let's talk about the characteristics you need to actually go and fight a hospital. Now, granted, this is a bit more conceptualized and this is more speaking broader, and this isn't backed by any science, but kind of like my thoughts on it. So the three things that you need to go ahead and, fight with a hospital is advocacy, persistence, and the courage to go ahead and do so. Now, everyone is different, and it's a sliding scale. Like, not everyone's 100% courageous all the time. Not everyone's 100% persistent all the time. Not everyone is a super advocate, right? And not everyone, and nobody has no advocacy. Nobody has no persistence. You always have some kind of persistence. It's on a sliding scale, right? But we're going to call these three things the fighting spirit for simplicity. Now, some parents will be so driven on getting justice and stand up to doctors, while other parents will want to just be left alone, no matter what harms have come their way. Now, let's say the quote-unquote old system of complaining to the hospital, it took about a 7 out of 10 or higher fighting spirit to go ahead and do it. Well, with the Do No Harm.report, let's say it brings it down to a 6.5 out of 10 to go ahead and fight with the hospital. Now, that might sound great, but the people who are going to advocate for themselves are going to do it regardless. But perhaps the time commitment of going through the whole process of doing it without the Do No Harm.report may have them give up eventually. So maybe the Do No Harm.report platform is going to help them see it through. And then there are people who just don't want any trouble or any more trouble than what they think it's worth. And they're still probably not going to do the Do No Harm.report. Now, granted, like I said, maybe the Do No Harm.report will lower that threshold of the fighting spirit needed, so the person is able to go and fight and file a complaint against the hospital. Okay, but once again, if you are a person with tons of fighting spirit, you're just going to seek justice on your own, regardless of the Do No Harm.report. And you are most likely aren't going to use the Intact America's Do No Harm.report website anyways, due to one, you not knowing about it or forgetting about it, or you not wanting to use the other person's help. Because people with high fighting spirits typically say, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Now, let me try and draw this on a conceptualized scale on the screen so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So on this screen, you're going to have people who may use the Do No Harm.report based off the fighting spirit, quote unquote. Now, 1 through 5, they're not going to fight against the hospital, even with the Do No Harm.report. They're just too passive. Now, the 5.1 through 7, they will use the Do No Harm.report to seek justice. Now, the 7.1 through 10, they're going to fight regardless, and they're going to use their own lawyers, or they're going to use themselves, and they're just going to go ahead and advocate for themselves without using the Do No Harm.report. So, besides meeting all the criteria to actually use the Do No Harm.report, you have a small range, a 1.9 range out of 10 of people that are likely going to have the quote-unquote fighting spirit to actually use the Do No Harm.report. Now, if most people fit in that range, I don't know, maybe, because a 5.1 through 7 is pretty average. And this is, once again, just my thoughts to try to conceptualize to people that people can still want to fight on their own, but then choose to not use the Do No Harm.report, or they could just choose not to fight the hospital and not file a complaint because they don't want to be a bother or be bothered, especially if they may lose their doctor. Because, they're just starting out being a parent, right? All right, and now here's another issue with the donoharm.report, and it's, wow, yeah, there's a lot of issues with donoharm.report. Now, I have been doing pots for a little bit. I kind of understand this. It's hard to advertise for Prevail over the system. I can't even imagine advertising for the donoharm.report. Like, for instance, imagine if I get the donoharm.report information now. Let's say I see it in a 30-second YouTube clip or advertising. 5 years later, if I have a child, there is a good chance that I'm going to forget all about this project. And I feel like most consumers, if this is put out into the airwaves or the social medias, they have a good chance of, one, not paying attention to it because it doesn't apply to them, or because they think that this type of bad thing most likely won't happen to them, or by the time they actually could use this information, them forgetting the donoharm.report information. Because honestly, the donoharm.report is a product that most people will never, ever, ever use. And if they do end up needing it, or if they do end up being able to use it and to be able to qualify to use it, they will do it just once in their life. It is an extremely rare occasion, and most people are going to see that. Also, another issue is Intact America planning to have brochures in the hospital to allow people to know that the donoharm.report exists? Like, why would hospitals allow that? Why would hospitals want to make their lives harder for themselves? Like, how is Intact America going to try and plan this out to let people know about the donoharm.report? And then, an even bigger problem is that a major amount of people don't see circumcision as a problem in the United States of America. So if they're not seeing circumcision as a problem, the donoharm.report kind of falls a lot pretty flat on its face, right? Because they're not going to know about foreskin forced retraction. They're not going to know that, I'm going to get solicited on getting my son circumcised. They're not going to know these things. So this is like, you have to first know that circumcision is a problem to use the donoharm.report truly. So is that a lot of people that do know that circumcision is bad? It's a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. And then the last issue is that on average, it takes seeing something 8 times in an ad for it to stick in the consumer's head. That's just a standard company's problem. So Intact America is going to have to spend a lot of money on advertising to get the donoharm.report to be effective, right? And I'm just having a really hard time to believe that the donoharm.report is going to gain traction with consumers. And I think it's going to cost millions and millions of dollars. So, and even then, I still think that it might not get adopted widely enough to be used in any functional capacity because there's so many different ways around it. Now, speaking of millions of dollars, what is the financial commitment of the donoharm.report? Well, the initial startup fund of the donoharm.report is right here, $275,000 to develop the donoharm.report. And they're currently asking $50,000 through its GoFundMe to cover operational costs, expanding the service to additional states, and promoting the service to consumers. If you add all of this up, it's costing about $325,000 already committed to this project. And that's just the start of the donoharm.report, because they're already planning on spending about $350,000, and they're only available in Georgia. How much will it cost Intact America to add a state? I have no idea. How much to advertise? I'm guessing millions, but I don't know. And I also don't really think that Intact America is necessarily great at advertising, and I'll do a video on that later. And also, I know this says this here, but if we go to their GoFundMe, it breaks down the donations a little bit better. It says that you're also paying for staff and processing for filing and following up on the medical complaints. Well, we've already covered how much the staff is getting paid. They're getting paid a little over $400,000 in management. So that's already $33,000 a month. Like, are they going to add to their management fees? Because if this is the case, at this rate, they're going to blow through their GoFundMe money in a month just for staff. Because that is how much Intact America is paying in management fees every single month. So, does Intact America actually think the do no harm.report is going to work. The true motivation behind Intact America doing the do no harm.report is a bit muddled. Have you ever heard the saying, when you are a hammer, everything looks like a nail? Being that Intact America employees are mostly Hudson Center for Health, Equity, and Quality and corporate employees, which I've already did a video on, so if you missed that, please definitely watch that right after this. If you go to the hudsoncenter.org website, you'll see their products. Their products right here is the Hudson Center builds software products to meet the needs of organization focused on social services programs and government-funded health programs. So look at that. This is literally what the Hudson Center offers. So since it's focused on social service programs and government-funded health programs, it makes sense why Intact America is going to go the route of a building software and releasing it in states, because when you're a software company, you're going to go ahead and make it a software problem. Like, even if you go up here, it says, we take care of data, you take care of people. Literally, the do no harm.report is helping Intact America capture data. As it says right here, Intact America will distribute the aggregate information to the media and the general public to create public outrage. Now, granted, you could make the same claim about POTS. You could say the people of POTS do financial things, so everything to us may look like a money problem, hence the POTS e-commerce program and the CareBuzz. But the only difference is I would never give donor money to our financial people, even if they were helping us. Wouldn't do that. I mean, to me, it seems like a conflict of interest, being in charge of two companies that are swapping money with each other. And in Intact America's, in the Hudson Center's case, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars being swapped. So why not, though, spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on building a website/platform that helps parents file complaints if you are a quote-unquote expert in building software products to meet the needs of organizations focused on social service programs and government health programs. So essentially, just to sum this whole thing up, is that the Intact America CEO, George-Ann Chapin, just so happens to be the owner of the other company called the Hudson Center, and they have the quote-unquote perfect solution for Intact America's mission that just so happens to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So to me, I wouldn't be surprised if the do no harm.report is a solution that got picked out not for the benefit of the public, but for other personal reasons. So it just seems that the do no harm.report, in my opinion, is a very convoluted way of an attempt at trying to put pressure on doctors to get them to stop circumcising. However, at best, I believe the threat of the do no harm.report is going to end up being something like, you better do circumcisions the correct way, and/or not retract, or we will report it. We are going to be there, and if you slip up, we are going to maybe sue you. We are going to make it too risky for you to perform the procedure or do a retraction or forced retraction. But however, there is a product already in place for that, and that's called a medical malpractice lawsuit. And guess who does that? Arc Law. Arc Law already goes ahead and does this. So literally, David Llewellyn has already represented over 50 related circumcision lawsuits, and the consumer of this product can get some money if they do end up winning. Once again, the do no harm.report is just like a lighter form of a medical malpractice lawsuit. And I don't know. Well, let's continue this conversation in the comments. Let me know what you guys think of the do no harm.report, and come join us on our Discord. We have already talked about it a little bit. Look at this poll currently. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Bye.